To move that the House takes note of miscellaneous business. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, let's take stock of where things are, Mr Speaker, as we head into the halfway point of this first week of the session, Mr Speaker, when the opposition once again is absolutely focused on the issues that matter. Mr Speaker, private dinners, innovations in fundraising, and even this afternoon, correct grammar, Mr Speaker. This opposition is a million miles from reality, Mr Speaker, and the people of New Zealand know it, Mr Speaker. Meanwhile, on this side of the House, we're focused on actually achieving things for New Zealand. And today we had another example of it, Mr Speaker, with more growth in employment. 84,000 New Zealanders have got jobs this year than they had a year ago, Mr Speaker. It's the largest increase in employment in nearly a decade. Nearly a decade, Mr Speaker, and not a word out of the opposition on that today. Mr Speaker, business and consumer confidence is at record highs. Manufacturing's been in expansion now for 19 months. Welfare reform is working. Mr Speaker, more people want to move to New Zealand and fewer Kiwis want to leave. Last month, Mr Speaker, we had a seasonally adjusted net loss to Australia of just 400 people, Mr Speaker. Nothing from the opposition on that. They're too wrapped up in their private dinners and their fundraising events. And, Mr Speaker, New Zealand is doing better on all other economic indicators. Economic growth, balance of payments. The Labor Party, their obsession about the balance of payments. Maybe it's some sort of delayed apology for how appallingly they did with the export sector when they were last in government, Mr Speaker. Our international liabilities, one of those things that Boffin Parker likes to focus on, Mr Speaker, how much we owe the world, is down to just 66% of our economy. It was just over 85% when Labor finished their handiwork in 2008, Mr Speaker. And the export crisis that we know about, our goods exports have just had their biggest quarter ever. The goods surplus for the last 6 months, over $2 billion, Mr Speaker. But that doesn't stop the boffins on the other side trying to reform the economy, Mr Speaker, with their wacky new monetary policy, which they have no idea how it would work. And here we are, 8 days into it, and one David Parker, boffin in charge, can't tell us, Mr Speaker, at all how it would work and to what extent it would work. Apparently, the rest of the world doesn't understand. It's very complicated, Mr Speaker. It's a very interesting alchemy of stuff that Mr Parker has conducted, Mr Speaker. He's concocted, but he cannot answer the question. It's a very simple question that neither he nor Mr Cunliffe can answer, which is very straightforward, which is how much would people's KiwiSaver rates have to go up to avoid a 1% increase in interest rates, Mr Speaker. And if they don't know the answer to that question, it's not a policy, it's a thought bubble. And the problem for the opposition is they don't know the answer, and the silence is deafening, Mr Speaker. And the problem with that is it's another example of a policy where you've got to read the fine print, Mr Speaker. It's like their trucking policy, which does nothing about trucks. It's like their baby bonus, which doesn't provide a baby bonus. And this is the monetary policy that doesn't actually achieve anything. It doesn't actually deal anything with interest rates, Mr Speaker. And the public know that, and the public say, actually, it's not just the public. There is, of course, one late lamented, again not mentioned in the House this week, Shane Jones. He knows it too, Mr Speaker. He popped his head up and said he's leaving, and we all thought, wonder why that is. And the reason was, Mr Speaker, is he believed that being an economic development minister in a government that's opposed to economic development was an oxymoron, Mr Speaker. And he's right, it would be. And so, not surprisingly, he started to talk about other jobs, Mr Speaker, because he realised it would be the worst possible job, because Labor and the Greens together are opposed to economic growth. So here we have it, Mr Speaker, on this side of the House, focused on the issues that matter, actually achieving great things for New Zealanders through the hard work of the government and New Zealanders. On the other side of the House, obsessing about the silly stuff and then coming up with wacky policies that achieve nothing. No wonder the country is in favour of this government, Mr Speaker. Thank you.
The question is the motion be agreed to. Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, how desperate is that government? The